Welcome back to the Coach Business School podcast. Today we're going to talk about a coaching approach called motivational interviewing. And I've just interviewed Bill Miller, who is the co-creator of motivational interviewing. This is a coaching approach that has, over the last few decades, helped millions and millions and millions and millions of people change behaviours. It's now widely used across NHS, public sector, in terms of medical profession. It's even reached as far as interrogation and used in so many different formats and ways that it's quite mind-blowing, really. But its origins came out of really helping people change their relationship with alcohol, which is something I'm always really interested in because one of my specialisms as a coach is alcohol-free performance coaching. So I've always been really drawn to the work of motivational interviewing. So that is what we're going to cover on today's conversation. Thank you for joining me as always. And this episode is brought by our coachbusiness.school, not .com, .school, where we train the next generation of brilliant life executive coaches, alcohol-free performance coaches, as well as then I work with qualified coaches to help them grow their business through our Coach MBA. Go to coachbusiness.school to check out all those incredible courses. All right, so motivational interviewing, what is it all about? Well, essentially, I had this lovely conversation with Bill Miller just yesterday, and that really is around my third book, which contains loads of insights around motivational interviewing and how we use that and utilize that in coaching to help people make lasting change. That's really what coaching's all about in many ways, if you think about it. It's always about change, particularly when you get into behaviors such as changing a relationship with alcohol, for example. There's that classic love-hate tension going on inside someone's mind, and we can work with motivational interviewing or that style and approach to help people overcome their contemplation. Now, this links back into the Stages of Change model, and I interviewed the co-creator of the Stages of Change model just the other day, Dr. Di Clementi, which was marvellous, by the way. I feel very grateful that I'm getting to work with and talk with and converse with like my idols in the world of coaching and change. And they're all linked because contemplation is that stage where we've got that like tension inside our mind, that ambivalence has appeared, that love, hate, behaviors like alcohol, sugar, whatever it might be, right? We're always in this state of, or will I, won't I, very often, until we get to a point where there is no ambivalence and we either fully love or fully hate the thing. For example, let's just say there is a food that you once ate and it made you sick. The ambivalence about that food, oh, I really like that food, but it made me sick, almost goes, it's just like, I'm not going to eat that. It's like off the table, isn't it? Almost instantly through that lived experience, right? So there's no ambivalence again. I just don't eat that because why would I? I don't enjoy it. It made me sick. Now, contrast that with something like chocolate. Chocolate, for example, you might be torn between it. It's like, oh, it's just so nice with a nice cup of jar and a little square of chocolate or more. But equally, it's not really good for me. It's really high in sugar and I'm going to put on a little bit of weight. That's ambivalence. Same with alcohol, right? It might be that love-hate with alcohol, that there's that sense that, oh, I quite like it to relax, but the next day when you're hungover, it's like never again. Love-hate, right? This is ambivalence inside humans' brains. And that's a normal part of being a human. It's really important to get that across. It's a normal part of being a human. But what we can do with this understanding is help people make lasting change. Because once you realize that change is all about ambivalence inside the mind, and where there's ambivalence, there's a need for willpower. Let's look at it like that. So think about it logically. If you have no ambivalence, i.e. it's all love or all hate, for example, let's just say my alcohol-free journey. At one point in my life, it felt like it was all upside. You know, in my sort of late teens, early 20s, into my probably early 30s, if you'd come along and said to me, you need to stop drinking, I would have thought you're mad. Like, why? Why would I do that? This is great. This is fun. It's how I connect and meet my friends. There was no ambivalence, right? So it just wasn't even on my mind. There was no love-hate. It was all love. Then, into my early 30s, the hangover started to hang around for a bit longer. And I thought, actually, I'm not sure about this alcohol thing. I'm starting to notice this anxiety the following day. I'm definitely underperforming in many domains of my life. The ambivalence reappeared. Now, where the ambivalence reappears, so does willpower. Because in those early teens and 20s, as mentioned, I didn't need willpower to resist alcohol because it was all love. Why would I resist it? But as soon as I started to get that love-hate inside my mind, the only way for me to not drink then was to use willpower, because it was part of my brain that thought it was good and there was perceived upsides to it. This is making sense. Now, if you go all the way along that continuum, and that's almost like when you're in the contemplation stage of the stages of change model that I've spoken about on previous episodes, and this is, again, contemplation, you're in the love-hate stage, that's a whole big spectrum, isn't it? There could be the moment you step into that day you just first become conscious of the fact that maybe your relationship with alcohol is not serving you, or you become conscious of the fact that maybe that chocolate is starting to put on the pounds. That's when you begin that contemplation. But you can imagine that's a big, long spectrum, all the way to the point where someone's like, I'm out of this now, I'm done. And then you flip into a new stage and there's no ambivalence again. For example, my alcohol-free adventure, I played around with that for a while and then got on a really great run of being alcohol-free, and I just loved that life. And partway through that journey, all of that ambivalence just went. So I popped out the other side where there's no ambivalence anymore. I just don't drink because why on earth would I? So I don't need willpower to resist alcohol because there's no ambivalence. The only time you need the willpower is when there's that love-hate going on. So in my mind, it was really simple. And I was so thrilled to be able to literally talk with the titans of the industry of change and really get across my ideas and concepts that I've built up over the last 12, 14 years, to have them like reaffirmed by like the absolute experts. And it's this: if change is all about ambivalence, all we need to do as coaches is help people overcome their ambivalence. And what is ambivalence made of? For me, it's predominantly made of beliefs. So it's a thinking game. It's our beliefs that we hold about these particular behaviours. Or I just really like the chocolate because it's just a bit of a reward for me, but it piles on the pounds. Right? These are just beliefs, right, that can be challenged and changed. Same with alcohol, you can challenge and change your thinking. And we know this through coaching: overcome your limiting thinking. And in doing so, it paves the way to change because it reduces or removes ambivalence. Where there's no ambivalence, there's no willpower, the change is made. Really, really powerful. Now, of course, there's a bit of emotions wrapped up in many of these behaviours, but what drives emotions? It is the beliefs that sit before the emotions that drives the emotions. Therefore, the root is always beliefs. Anyone that's ever trained with me will know that my style of coaching is all about beliefs coaching. That is the root cause of everything. If you can get into someone's beliefs, and invariably their beliefs are made up stories about things that are not even true, and help them overcome that limiting thinking, it paves the way to transformative coaching. They see options that just didn't exist before. So for me, it was really simple. I took a step back and thought, well, change is ambivalence, and ambivalence really for me is made up of beliefs. So it's just beliefs coaching. If we can help people change and challenge their own beliefs so that they think differently about alcohol, for example, or the change they're trying to make, then ultimately it's easy, right? Because there's no willpower left. For example, let's imagine Alcohol Andy walks into a bar. Alcohol Andy, when I was in those teens and 20s, I walk into a bar, there's a beer in front of me. Now, my beliefs at that stage of my life were alcohol's all upside. My emotions might have been excitement and joy at having a drink. My actions are I take a drink. Let's just say ambivalent Andy walks into that same bar, right? 10 years later, now I'm in my mid-30s and I'm experiencing ambivalence. There's the I like to drink to socialise on one hand, and there's these hangovers are hanging around far too much on the other. It's a 50-50 call whether I take that drink or not, because my beliefs now are there's some love in there and there's some hate in there. So the emotions that I experience are probably mixed and confused. The actions that follow are 50-50. It could be take the drink or walk past it. Let's just say I'm stressed out and maxed out. And here's the thing about willpower and why it doesn't work. It's like a metaphorical muscle. The more it's used, the quicker it drains. So let's say it's at the end of a long, stressful day. My willpower tanks are empty. I have that battle inside my mind. I lose. I take a drink. Fast forward another 10 years, 45. Alcohol-free Andy walks into the same bar, sees the same drink, has the same neurological experience of that drink. But my beliefs have completely changed at that stage. Why the hell would I drink? There's nothing for me. Therefore, my emotions are disinterest. My actions are I just walk past the beer into my best life. Now, what's changed? The alcohol never changed. The substance itself, the chocolate, the alcohol, the exercise, that doesn't change. All that changed were my beliefs. Same thing again. So it's a beliefs game, ambivalence game, change. And I think as coaches, when we understand this, is rocket fuel. So some of the big principles that come out of motivational interviewing really are this. It was based originally around some of the wonderful work of Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers was really behind the behaviourist movement of therapy, counselling, coaching, which was just being and holding the space, just giving someone that unconditional positive regard for them, not telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing, just holding the space, allowing them to explore their own wonderful minds. And in doing so, Carl Rogers was seeing therapists get results above and beyond anyone else, not by telling them what to do or clever tools and techniques, just being there for another human. And what Bill Miller started to notice when he really just sat back and observed therapists and coaches was those that actually were that non-judgmental and held the space started to get results others couldn't. Rather than traditionally, it was a bit more telly-offy, shoulds and shouldn'ts, where there was resistance. What motivational interviewing figured out, and Bill Miller, was that by allowing people the space to come up with their own autonomous ideas was so much more powerful and impactful than telling them what they should or shouldn't do. So the second someone feels like you're telling them what they should do, the barriers come up, don't they? We know that in our own life. There's always resistance to that. Don't tell me what to do kind of resistance. So the skill of motivational interviewing, in many ways, is just rolling with the resistance, they tend to call it, where actually you're not like meeting it head on. You're not telling someone what they should or shouldn't do. You're just asking great questions that allows them to explore their own mind, see that ambivalence for what it is, and start to make their own choices to change. Because that's that autonomous, right? So it's internal rather than external. And in doing so, people get results they couldn't normally get, because invariably in the world, people tell you what you should and shouldn't do, because people fall into the mentoring, advice giving trap. And we know that doesn't work, because it can only ever come through your map and it lands on someone else's map and it might not work. Whereas motivational interviewing, which I love about it, is about getting in there and just asking great questions. And just holding the space and that real sense of team. We are a team. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to work with you as a team to help you achieve what you need to achieve. And in this case, it might be to change a relationship with alcohol. It might be to change a relationship or excel in the workplace. But we're a team. I'm not here telling you what you should or shouldn't do. I'm going to work with you and roll around with this resistance, if it's there, or this ambivalence, and just help you explore it. And helping you explore it and becoming more conscious of it, it's much easier then to see, is it a truth for you still? For example, let's just link back to alcohol, where I do a lot of coaching. Is it a truth still that alcohol is fun for you? Which is a great question, right? Because on the face of it, someone might have been telling stories for years that alcohol is fun, and no one's ever really helped them challenge that story. And that story might have been true. If you think back to alcohol, Andy, in my teens and 20s, it would have felt true for me, that story. But fast forward into my mid-30s, I was still telling those stories that alcohol's fun, but it was no longer fun. I just hadn't worked with a great coach that had helped me unpick that ambivalence by just asking me that really simple question, and allowing me the space and time to really reflect upon that. And then probing that question, has there ever been a time when it wasn't fun when you were drinking alcohol? How would you rate your last 5 drinking sessions, from fun, average to not very good at all? And again, they're just questions. By allowing someone to explore their own mind, sometimes they see what they couldn't see before. It's that great Carl Jung quote, "What was once a truth in the morning of our life, by the afternoon has become a lie." So sometimes just that questioning when there's ambivalence is enough to help people see it from a different angle, realize that the stories of old are no longer true, and it starts to dissipate that ambivalence. And all of a sudden they move further along that continuum of contemplation, ready to prepare to change. Because now, rather than being completely torn, if you can imagine that seesaw inside their mind, it's actually flipped to one side. It's flipped to the side of making the change. There's more reasons to make the change than not. The positives of making the change start to vastly outweigh the perceived positives of staying in that behaviour. This is the secret to motivational interviewing. And I would argue one of the secrets to great coaching. Full stop. And that is why motivational interviewing has been applied into like the most amazing different spaces. Bill Miller was telling me just yesterday, I touched on it at the start of the podcast, it's being utilised and used in interrogation. Some of the British forces are starting to use it in interrogation. So it turns out, rather than you like torturing and battering some of these captives, as it were, you can imagine in that environment, actually just allowing them time and space to talk and asking them reflective questions and holding the space gets better results than that traditional, we're going to like batter it out of them. Like, this is because to understand human nature is to realize that as soon as we meet with resistance and we feel a sense of resistance, the guards go up and then it's over. Right? We're not listening anymore. We're not doing the work. We're not mining our own mind. We're just shut down. It's like, no, you're wrong, I'm right. We sit in that trench of our belief. Whereas with motivational interviewing, that skill of just holding the space and being there for someone and allowing them the time to explore their own mind and just asking those great probing questions allows them to get in there and do the work themselves. And then it becomes an autonomous decision to change. And once it's an autonomous decision to change, the likelihood of it happening are vastly higher. And then you're in a wonderful space where you can collect more evidence for your side of the seesaw to support the change you're trying to make. Confirmation bias kicks in a good way, because then you start to not notice the old perceived upsides and notice more and more of the new wins of the change. This is the secret in many ways to great behavioural change coaching. And anyone that's trained with me on my diploma courses, I also train them in alcohol-free performance coaching, which essentially is just change coaching, a specialism in change coaching, which could apply to any change, not just changing your relationship with alcohol. And I think it's one of the most powerful courses that actually we offer, because it's that course, that learning really, I think, that creates a brilliant wraparound, world-class coaching. So for this little conversation, I just wanted to share some insights around motivational interviewing and why it can be applied in almost every facet of coaching, and why I think it's the secret to world-class coaching. Unpicking and challenging your clients' limiting thinking about the behaviours they want to change or make. And in doing so, you create this autonomous momentum that very often gets them to a place of change they would never, ever have got to on their own or in a traditional mentoring style conversation. That, my wonderful coaches, is the power of what we do. Now, hopefully you enjoyed today's conversation. Don't forget, if you are interested, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about becoming a coach, go to coachbusiness.school. Our diploma course includes the alcohol-free performance coach specialism. It might be the last time we do that in April. So if you are thinking about coming to train with me, April's the course to get yourself on. For all qualified coaches, don't forget we have this incredible coach MBA, which is all about business and marketing, and it's where I spend most of my time with our coaches, really to help them grow the business of their coaching dreams. Again, go to coachbusiness.school or reach out to team@andyramage.com. The team will always be happy to help. Until next time, keep coaching your coach, Andy.